Hey, this is Terry with Terry's Tidbits and the Des Moines Area Community College. This is the second to the last of the videos in this particular series. This coming week, it's just going to be a Q&A. So this topic today is the automation tools, including Process Builder, Workflow, Approval Processes, and Flow. I do think you're going to have to still know Process Builder and Workflow for the current version of the admin exam. Once they redo it, it probably will sunset those questions off the exam, much as they are sunsetting those Process Builder and Workflow rule tools. So for now, I think it's important that you understand what the capabilities across all the automation tools are. So let's help you get certified and watch the video along with the team. Hey everyone, it's Terry with Terry's Tidbits. I am so glad you're here. We are on our last session for actual presentations. Next week, we will just do some Q&A, and you guys can come with whatever questions you have. We'll make sure that you're prepped on whatever topic is needed there. But this week, it's all workflow and process automation. That's 16% of the exam. So it's a chunk of the exam all in one session here today. So we have Bethany, you're up first with the traditional automation tools and their capabilities. Aaron, I've got you after that with approval processes, probably my least favorite automation tool. and then Spencer, you have Flow, which is my favorite automation tool. So let's go ahead, Bethany, and let you kick it off, and then we'll go around the table.
All right. So you're going to be annoyed because my actual example that I gave was for approval.
Oh, really?
So sorry. Right. And I'm not actually going super in depth with the different options, but just kind of like an overview.
Yeah, and honestly, the exam it's more about capability on all of
really?
these. Which tool would you use?
Gotcha.
And so it's not necessarily how they. You don't have to know how to build a flow, or you just need to know their capability. Workflow rules, they might get into that. No, that's validation. Never mind. We're good. I'll let you continue.
Well, and they actually give a good it's like a comparison chart or whatever. And yeah. I'll show that kind of at the end. That way it kind of shows you what you're needing to do and then what tool you might want to use. So I found that more handy than sifting through all the documentation, honestly.
Good.
All right. So, all right. So workflow process automation. All right. So the tool capability. So why do we want to automate? Obviously, we want to save our users time. We want to do whatever we can to improve their efficiency. So some tools that are offered to automate the following. So like a guided visual experience, behind the scenes automation, and again, approval automations. All right, so you may be thinking, all right, so which automation tool do I use? Well, Salesforce basically provides multiple tools to automate your organization's, all of those repetitive, business. Ashley, I like your emoji. Sorry, repetitive business processes. So those include the solutions that are included are things for approvals, like a process builder, workflow, and flow builder, which Terry, you mentioned. Were you going to say something?
Nope.
Okay. Never mind. All right. The best automation tool for your needs depends on the type of business process that you are going to be automating. All right. So an example could be, it's pretty just a basic, simple example. So maybe an employee requests time off, and maybe that needs to be approved by the employee's manager. Then you'll need to ensure that when a time off request is submitted for approval, then the right person receives the request. So to automate your organization's processes for approving those records, you'll want to create an approval process. And then this link will actually take you, I think it takes you to the steps to create the approval process and give you more information into that. When I was going through this, it seemed like the approvals is kind of like the basic thing. Would that be correct? if it ever
What do
comes up.
what do you mean by that basic thing?
I mean, it's kind of like the first thing you would start with, or it's the more simple solution than some of the other ones
For automation.
Yeah.
Type things. Yeah, I mean it's very narrow focused in that it approves
right
something.
That's what I mean. Yep.
Yeah.
It gets more complicated kind of with workflow, process builder, and the flow builder.
Right, because you have a lot more options. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, for example, with workflow, obviously create workflow rules. The process builder, you can do processes, and flow builder flows. All right, so a solution. Which one would I start with in the scenario that I gave? So Salesforce would recommend starting actually with process builder, especially for business processes that can be simplified to if-then statements. So an example is maybe if a case is escalated, then notify the account owner. So maybe like in our approval situation, say you have an approval that you want to be done, but it needs to be escalated further. So then maybe you want to then navigate to process builder to then create those extra workflows for that process. So process builder will include almost all the functionality that's available in the workflow rules and more. A single process can do what it would normally take multiple workflow rules to do, and it can support 3 types of processes. So record change process basically starts when a record is created or updated. Event process starts when a platform event management is received. And I'm not sure what they meant by invocable process, Terry.
Invocable process
I was going through this.
is that is code. Okay. So if you've got and code that's running, you can well, let me give you a non-code example, I guess. If you have a process builder calling another process builder, that would be an invocable process.
Okay, gotcha.
Likewise, if you had a flow calling process builder or flow calling another flow, those are done that way. And you also can have Apex be invocable, which means in essence, you're calling something else from within the flow or within your process builder.
Okay.
You're sending the process off to something else.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. All right. So when I was going through this, I noticed like if a process was too complicated or requires more advanced functionality, you'll want to kind of go into flow builder. So in our example, if you wanted to be able to, again, escalate that time off request, maybe you could accomplish this through the complex branching logic in flow builder. If a user wants to sort through, iterate over, and operate on several records, so that could be a good solution as well. So another example, after an opportunity is closed on one, maybe you want to calculate the opportunity discount, and then you would want to apply that to all the related opportunity products. So Flow Builder just kind of allows you to get a bit more complicated on if you're looking at metrics, things like that. One good tool I didn't come across was that basically comparison chart that I mentioned before. It really kind of outlines all the different automation capabilities and maybe what you want to use it for. And of course, when I'm sharing my screen, it doesn't want to come up. It's too slow. There we go.
Yes.
And scroll down. It was too big for me to fit into my presentation. So it kind of goes over the different items that each one of these automation tools will feature: process builder, flow builder, workflow, and approvals. Whether it has Apex code, dealing with records, anything basically you want to refer to, this is a good resource.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
And then they also go into equivalent features and flows and workflow rules, which kind of even gets a little bit more detailed, which I'm not sure if you really need to know that for the exam, but there might be a few things in there that you might need to know.
Yeah, I think the thing on this exam, it is still going to cover workflow rules. It is going to cover process builder. you're going to probably be asked which tools have the ability to do X, Y, and Z. This particular scenario, whatever it is, which ones could you use?
Okay.
So it is possible that Process Builder could still show up on that exam. It's possible that Workflow Rule could still show up on the exam. You might even get a question of which automation tools can send outbound messages.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
That's something you can't do with Process Builder. You can do with Workflow Rules.
Okay.
You can't do it with Flow
email?
without code. No, and outbound message is the next one.
Without code. Gotcha.
Yeah. Actually, send an outbound message. Yeah, without code. Go scroll up. What do they say which ones are available? It's the last three.
So it's Flow Builder, Workflow, and Approvals.
Yeah. So
you can even. Oh yeah, that makes sense. You could. I didn't think about approvals in there. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Everybody but Process Builder.
Yeah.
That's going to be one of the few that Process Builder can't do that the others can.
Okay.
It seems like a trick question.
It does. But I would just keep that one in the back of your head.
Okay.
You don't even have to know what outbound messages are, but know that that's a difference.
Okay, cool. But anyway, that chart's super helpful. And then I think that might be my last. It is.
Yep.
I should not say that you shouldn't know what outbound messages are. But from an automation standpoint, I think it's good to know that for sure that Process Builder can't send them. It's basically it's a SOAP message, an integration. It's an integration with other systems.
Is it showing my screen, family?
Yes.
Good. Yeah, it's lacking the red bars again. So approval processes, just like Bethany shared, it's one of many automation tools, probably the one with the most narrow of scope and limited in capability. It's usually restricted to a single sort of stack in terms of people, but I can show you through the example how you can send it to multiple people for looking at, but usually there'd be one approval. I have the link to this Salesforce help article right here for future studying and reviewing. Now, something that I thought was interesting in the pedagogy of teaching about these tools, they want you to take time thinking about what you want to do with them. The way the tools are organized, it helps to have the email templates in line, all the objects and record fields, and knowing what you're going to put. Because as you start doing these wizards, that's when you're connecting the pieces. You're like, I want this email template to go to this person when this is said. You don't write those as you're doing it. So let me pull up the little checklist and I can give you an example of all that they say you should consider before developing an approval step. And I'll go fast through this because Terry gave the good perspective that knowing how to do these isn't necessarily as useful, but from a business perspective and us here working in Salesforce, prepare an approval request email tape, get the posts template, determine who's going to be sending it, whether it's from the Salesforce system or is it from the email of the owner of that record, et cetera. Determine the assigned approval, default fields being like the manager in the hierarchy. And I'll be able to show that as well later. Delegated approver, if that person's unavailable. If there's a filter, if there's too many, there are different functions there. And then actions, like does it create a task? That's the only type of record, as we saw in Bethany's matrix, can be done. So this is kind of a workable checklist. If you ever need to create an approval process yourself, that can start you there. And they're all kind of born out of this help article. So this is the beginning. So that sort of preparation before doing any of these tools, making sure you understand why, who, and what you're doing throughout will make it actually easier to get it up and running. Hop into the next slide. There are two wizards inside of the Salesforce instance. There's the Jumpstart wizard and the standard wizard. This links to the specific Salesforce help page. And then there's a video where they walk you through and do the whole thing, but I'll just kind of do that with us here. Let me hop to mine. So we're going to go up here. Approval. or give me a second. I was doing this on my other machine. Setup. And you guys are seeing my Salesforce instance?
Yes.
Yeah. Process automation, approval processes. And like I had here, I try to do the trail, like breadcrumbs to get to places. Coming back here. Okay. So you start off here, it'll have this manage approval processes for. So let's say I wanted someone to approve, each price that might be assigned to an opportunity. So manage approval processes for opportunities. So I'm selecting that record type, going here. This is the example that I had earlier. We're just going to create new for the sake. Jumpstart wizard or the standard wizard. Let's take a look at the standard wizard. Okay, we got example. It'll automatically populate with a unique name that can be referenced by the Salesforce API. So let's see. It's kind of cool because it will automatically generate that name in Salesforce API conventions. So you don't have to do that. Step process. Steps are added to processes before they go live. When you activate an approval process, you're not able to add other steps or modify certain aspects of it while it is activated. And I'll reiterate that later in my slides. So this, we can put the logic in this approval step. When does this need to happen? When does this approval process need to happen? We'll just say opportunity will do, is there a price or something that I can do here?
Should be amount is likely its name.
There it is. It's the very first one. Yeah. And we'll just say, anything greater than $1,000 I want approved if they think they're getting an opportunity that big. So hit next. Okay. The automated approver is determined by the default right here for the standard user field. So underneath the user that's doing this, I'll just have it correspond to their manager that would be hit. Use approver field of opportunity owner. So this would be whomever owns the opportunity. It would notify their manager as opposed to, Terry, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the person that is instigating the step on said opportunity, if that box is checked.
Yeah, that's a true statement.
Thank you. And then administrators can only edit the records during the approval process. For the sake of this, I want the manager to be able to correct any records. So then I could choose down here. So a lot of these editability and sort of permutations in the wizard, think about how your users would do this along the step. I want the manager to be like, no, that's not a $1,000 opportunity. That's a $100 opportunity, and being able to edit that themselves. During our checklist, you would create your own email templates ahead of time. In here, we have a batch of example templates for the sake of the canned Salesforce thing. So we'll just put in here a template. You would use the template that corresponds to your approval process that would be sent to the manager. Hit next. Now you have to choose which fields are being sent over to. So the ones that I want the manager to be able to see so they can know whether or not they should approve or reject. We'll give them amount, and then let's also do quantity so they can see how many of our widgets we're selling today at the widget farm. Approval page fields. We want to display approval history information. So that way, if there's any other context that would be relevant for the manager on this opportunity, they're able to see that in the approval process. And then we're going to keep the default security recommendations. You can let them do it from their wirelessly enabled mobile device or the Salesforce application. Otherwise, you can say only within the Salesforce application. So we'll just keep that there. Allowed submitters, just the opportunity owner. You can create a more complex hierarchy if you had more roles. My Salesforce instance is pretty bare bones.
If you change your the search there from owner.
Mm-hmm.
That'll give you more options there that are available to you.
There we go. Yeah, we'll let the CEO say something if they want. Thank you. So search up here, because originally I just had it under creator, or owner, role and subordinates. This gives you the whole tree for the hierarchy, and then the different types of users. So add the submit for approval button, approval history related list. Default, leave that on. And then you also have the ability to allow submitters to recall approval requests. So right now, without that box checked, once the user submits that, their manager gets it, and there's no way for them to call it back. The manager will get it no matter what. This would give them the ability to recall that request for approval. We're going to hit save. Okay. I'm going to leave this open for a little bit. You can leave an approval process as it is, but an approval process without steps, like do I send an email, do I create a task, etc., those sorts of automations, it's kind of useless right now. So we'll come back to that. Let me hop back into my presentation. So that was the standard wizard. The Jumpstart wizard is supposed to be simpler, but I just did my example with the standard wizard. And then there's a video walkthrough. Did I pull that up for us? Yep. So this is an example. It's 10 minutes worth of work. I recommend everybody do it. So that way they're familiar with that. It goes over, the instructor also creates the little fields for you, so you can actually do some of the logic and have the emails in there, and then you can get some points for your trailhead. Hopping back to my presentation, adding steps to an approval process. So approval steps, they define the chain of approval for a particular approval process. This is the ordered what needs to happen, because sometimes it isn't just as simple as manager says yes. There could be filters within there, such as the first manager says yes, goes up to your skip boss and lets them know. Each step determines which records can advance to the next step, who to assign these approval requests to, and whether to let each approver's delegate respond to the request, so that you can also set up a chain of delegation there. And then you're also able to put the else sort of into the logic. If it doesn't get approved into a certain step, where does it go in terms of branching logic? Later steps specify what happens if the approver rejects. Hopping down here, these actions that we can add to the steps, submission, final approval, rejection, or recall. There are 4 different automated actions. You can create a task. You can assign a task to the user you specify. You can specify the subject, status, priority, and due date of said task. Email alert. This is kind of what Bethany was showing in that matrix. It doesn't have the ability to, let me see, right here. It doesn't have the ability to send emails in the regular sense of like mail merge, and from an Outlook standpoint, it just does the alert system that you would set up with your templates in the approval chain over here. Email alert sends an email to designated recipient using the specified email template. Field update. This lets you go to a record and change the value of a selected field. You can specify the value or create a formula for the new value. Or an outbound message. Now, this is what we were talking about in terms of sending a message to a designated endpoint. You can specify a username and what data to include in this message. And then this does not work with junction objects. Sorry, Terry.
Yeah, I was just going to add that those are the same 4 that workflow rules use. So
that is really helpful.
Approval processes, workflow rules, all the actions are the same.
Okay. That's awesome. And then hopping down here, and then after you've added a step, you can activate that process. Please note that you can only add steps to approval processes if it's inactive. Once it's been activated, you can't add more steps to it. That's just not how it works. Hopping back over here. You can come back to those approval processes and add steps to them when they're inactive. That said, I left at the end of our wizard, our standard wizard here. So let's create a little process step. First step. example automatically populates for the API. Okay. All records should enter this step that are part of this approval process. Otherwise, sorry, I'm going kind of fast. Enter the step if the following, you can add certain logic to it. Like not every single thing that goes through the approval process needs to hit each of these steps. So you can add logic through here. Step 3, select approver, let the submitter choose the approver manually. The default setting, like we said, we want it to use that user's record, look at their manager and send it to their manager. And this is just confirming there that I want this to be there. So I got the approval step, did the kind of outlining there. Now I can create what I want to do of those 4. We have task, email alert, field update, outbound message. Let's send an outbound message. Create a new approval thing. We're going to spam my email. Let's do spam Aaron. Description, send an outbound message. And then I could give it some endpoint URL. Can I do something as crude as this? Barry? Would this send me an email?
No. The endpoint will be a website like address.
Yep. There we go. And then let's give it, what fields do I want? I want amount, and where is, whether or not it's 1. Okay. And then save. So now it will send these fields to endpoint.com or to test.com. So this, what I'm imagining for outbound messages, can be really good for flagging APIs that are not Salesforce APIs. Am I right, Terry?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I was going to say Spencer might actually have real opinions here, but when I normally am hitting things up with Postman or something, it seems pretty similar here. So I could set endpoints for other APIs to get information there. So that's an example of one of the automated tasks that I can set up through approval processes. Okay, hopping back to the presentation. Now, I know that my presentation was a little bit narrow in scope, so I do want to show real quick some of the resources for studying. This is the prepare to create an approval process, the checklist that I showed earlier. Opened it twice. Set up an approval process. This was the holistic one that I included at the beginning of my section of the slides. So this takes you to the checklist. This explains the difference of the wizards. This shows you how to add actual steps once you have the process in place. This shows you how to do the tasks, email notifications, outbound messages, and what was the 4th one?
It's task.
Field update. That was what I was missing. Yeah. Yep. I just wanted to do that. And then finally, you have to go in and activate the process. And then like I have the wizard there in the video I have linked. And then Bethany also has the good tools in the earlier part of the presentation, where I think knowing this matrix will be important in differentiating process builder, flow builder, workflow, and approvals.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to interrupt briefly to again say thank you to our sponsor, the Des Moines Area Community College. Here locally we call them DMACC, dmac.edu. If you are interested in any form of education, continuing ed, please check out their website. We are working closely together to get some Salesforce specific training put together. So check that out if you're interested in learning more and having a classroom style training for Salesforce. Thanks again to the wonderful folks at DMACC. Nicely done. The question would be, what would be possible reasons a workflow or a process, sorry, let me start that over. What are the possible reasons an approval process would not run? It's not a trick question, just there's a couple of different reasons. And anybody can answer that.
An active user, maybe? Associated to the approval process?
That's an interesting comment. Not the right answer for this, but the reason it's interesting though, Ashley, is because if you have email alerts that are going out to somebody, and that email, if in the email alert it only has an inactive user in it and not somebody that is also active, that will create a problem. But because then it can't send it, and so you will get errors for that. But so good one. I'm glad you brought that up because that's good to know. Other reasons an approval process maybe would not run. You hit one of them, Aaron, right at the very end of your presentation. What's the last step that you have to do?
Activate it.
Activate it. Okay. What's the very first step that you end up doing when you're going through your wizard? You define what?
Objects fall into that process. Or rectangles.
Okay. All right. Let's go with the second one. It might be in the second step. Would be the entry criteria. So you have criteria that determines whether or not that it jumps into the approval process. So that would be the other one. Both good things to be aware of. You could get hit with like a scenario-based question that says, hey, this approval process isn't running. Why?
Because it's not hitting the entry criteria is a valid answer there. So that would make sense. I was just doing the cheating Google foo while Ashley was presenting the scenario with the inactive users. And someone came up, they said there's a checkbox where sometimes it can loop through the objects looking for certain things and try to run the process multiple times. So there is just like, apparently all of these automations are a headache to troubleshoot. And there's a lot of forums and people arguing online about how to troubleshoot these. So definitely taking your time and making sure each of the criteria are up to snuff and following those checklists can kind of avoid some of these pitfalls.
Yeah, very good. All right. Spencer, are you up next?
I am. Share screen. See it?
Yes.
I forgot to add all my stuff to the other presentation, so I do not have the Salesforce themed presentation. But we'll be talking about flows. And so flows are just like a very declarative and drag and drop way of creating a process. And so they're really simple, but they have a lot of power behind them. And so there's a few parts to what a flow actually is. There's Salesforce Flow, and that's the product that encompasses building, creating, and running all of those flows and processes. There's Flow Builder, which is the drag and drop tool you will use to build a flow. And then there's Flow, the application that automates a process by gathering various pieces of data and then doing some type of other process within your Salesforce org. And so there's a lot of different types of flows. For example, there's a screen flow, which requires some level of user interaction. There's various auto-launched flows, and so those can have different types of triggers. And so there might be one scheduled one that you might have set up to run at like 2 a.m. every day when no one's on your Salesforce org. There's a lot of different ones, but these are some of the more common ones you'll probably run into. And then for Flow Builder, there are 3 key components to that. There's the toolbox, and I'll go over all of this, go a quick demo, but there's the toolbox, which has all of the elements and resources for actually building your flow. So like adding a screen to your flow. Then there's the canvas, which is actually where you will build your flow. And so that's dragging all those things together on that and connecting them. And then the button bar just contains a bunch of relevant pieces of information. So have you activated this flow? Have you saved it recently? When was it last saved? Things like that. And so building a flow is really easy. If you want to, you just go to the setup, search for flow, select flows, and click new flow. And so a quick demo of all of that. Go to setup, search flows. New flow, and then this will prompt you with what type of flow you want. And so, like I said, there's a lot of different flows. And so depending on your use case, it's just picking the right one. For this one, we'll just go over a screen flow, which requires some level of user interaction. Click create, and now we're on the canvas or the flow builder. And so here's the button toolbar at the top that has a lot of information. You can change the layout of it. And so for this one, we'll start by adding a screen. And for the demo, we'll say we're creating a new lead form. And so we'll just label that lead demo. And so we can then pick or drag and drop a bunch of fields we want this screen to have. And so, for example, a lead needs a last name. That's a required field. And so we'll set that label to last name and specify that's required. And then we can do a lot of different other things with this. Like you can validate the input if you want it to be validated a certain way. You can also conditionally show things. And so you can create these conditions of when you want to show this field. And I'll show more examples in that or for that in a bit. A lead also needs a company so we'll add that, specify that's required, and then add a checkbox alongside an address. And so then you can also set a lot of different default values. And so for this checkbox, I will want it to be set to false. And so we can set it to global constant false. Show address. And then we can conditionally show or hide this address component of this flow by going over to set component visibility when a condition is met and say, and then we can look at this checkbox value and look at the value it has and say, if it's true, then show it. And then because I have it defaulted to false, this address part will by default be hidden. Address. And so that's just the very easy way of creating a screen on that. And so then we can drag and connect this. And then once we have that, we can do a lot of other different things. So for example, we can embed a lot of different logic within flows. And so for example, we can create like a decision. And so if we want to route or only accept certain types of leads, so maybe if they're not from Iowa, don't accept them. We can look at like the address state and route the lead accordingly. State is Iowa. And then we can look at the address field we just added and specifically look at the state or provenance. And if it equals Iowa, then that will create a new pathway. So we can then drag that to the decision tree. And then from there, we can, since we're creating leads for this, we can then create a record. And so there's a lot of other different things you could do, like update records or get records. But for this, we'll create a new lead. Create lead, and we're only going to create one lead. And here is where we select what object we're actually working with. So for this one, a lead. And here we can map the fields from that form we just built to the lead object or the new lead we're creating. And so for the last name, we're going to set that equal to the field in the last name part of that form. Company equals the company. Then we'll just do state for the address. address and state. And then we can then connect this and choose which scenario. Because we just created a decision, we can say if the state's Iowa, then we'll create a new record, or we can just do the default outcome. So for this one, we'll do if the state's Iowa and connect it that way. And then we can hit save. And then we can even run and debug it to see how it looks and feels now. So if we don't include anything, it'll get mad. It says we need to include that. Test, show address. It's able to conditionally show these fields. And we will only put Iowa next. And that shows you that it was able to successfully create a lead and the transaction was committed. And so the flow works perfectly fine. And so there's a lot you can do with this. That's just like the very minimal way of creating a flow. But to actually use the flow, make sure it's saved, go back and we'll go to some random page. So we'll edit this page. And in order to put a screen flow on here, you just go to Lightning App Builder, select flow, and drag that down. And then you'll be able to select what flow you want to add. Mine might have not saved properly.
You just need to activate it.
Oh, right. Go back to that real quick.
Just go back into your canvas. That's probably your easiest. Yeah, there you go.
Activated.
And you'll probably have to refresh. Yeah.
It's a very crucial step.
It is.
Go back, find the flow, drag that onto your page wherever you want it, and then you'll be able to see that flow we just created. I believe not every flow can actually be embedded this way. Only certain types of flows, like screen flows, can actually be put on these pages like this. So hit save, activate, go back. Did I miss a step, Terry?
Just refresh your page a half dozen times and it hopefully will show up. Oh, we must have missed something there, or we didn't do something, it looks like. I don't know what it was. It looked good as you were doing it. Activated, yeah. Assign as, yeah, there you go. And both.
Say it one more time. Okay, and so that flow we just built is now embedded within this lead page. And so test demo 2, and we'll say that the state is Iowa. And so I didn't add a page for like confirmation, but if we go back to our leads, we see that that lead was just created now. That's all I have.
So on your screen flow, if you wanted to pass in the current record into your screen flow, how would you do that? I can open to anybody.
Pass the record ID.
Yeah. And what's that syntax look like from within the flow? Can you go back to your flow, Spencer? And if you cancel out of that screen and just go to the toolbox manager.
Yeah, you just want to create a new resource. Click on manager.
Just a little bit higher. Yeah.
Yep. There you go. New resource. And so you have two options here, and I think it is going to be a variable, I guess. So we only have one option here, variable. Your API name, it does have to be exactly this syntax. So it's record ID, lowercase record, and a capital I, lowercase d. I don't know why it's that, but that's what it is. The data type is the one that's interesting because historically we always just used past and the ID as a text field. You can set that now as a record, and it will pass in all of the fields from your record into the flow. And then the other piece there that's important is to flag it for input, available for input.
Then done.
Yep, and then done. Save that as a new version, just for fun, and activate the new version. And let's go back into your screen. To your record page, sorry. Lightning record page. And go ahead and click on your flow if it's there. Or re-add it in either way. Looks like we have to add it back. And demo. And then now you see toward the bottom of you see your record ID is listed there, and you can pass your values into that variable. So that will take whatever your current record is and push it into the flow. You'll probably want to know that. So your input variables on your flow allow you to send it to receive information from wherever it's whatever's calling your flow. Allows you to receive values into the flow. The output variables allow you to send values from your current flow into another whatever it is that you're sending it to. Could be an invocable Apex. It could be into another flow. So that input and output when you're defining your variables is an important one to just be aware of. Because if you don't define a variable with that, it's going to only be available within that specific flow.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yep.
I love the fact that you said flow is easy. Kudos to you for that, because I rarely hear that. So that's awesome. I like that. Because it can be if when it's broken down into some of these more simplistic type options. But I think the thing there to be aware of with flow is just the ability to create complex workflows is really, I think, the key there. Another piece that I think is important is to know that you can that there are templates available for workflow rules. I'm sorry, not workflows, for flow. So you can download pre-built templates from AppExchange that you can plug in and have your flow all pre-built for you. That's probably a good one to understand as well. But yeah, I think that's pretty good. Yeah, any other questions on flow or anything there? Look at Ashley celebrating for you.
Yeah, it was good. I like the live demo.
Yeah, very nice. Any questions on any of our topics? Y'all are wanting to get out of here early today. All right, then next week we will just do Q&A. Come with any questions that you have. We will go through the quiz type stuff that I'll have put together for us as well. And those are always kind of nice because it lets us really test whether or not we understand our topics well. But I feel pretty good that we've covered everything well at this point. So I think you're in good shape. I would, again, still recommend getting it scheduled, make it real, get the exam scheduled if you're going to do it. Because I really want to hear how you do.
I know the recording is still on, Terry, but can Kevin share those resources? I think he mentioned 3 weeks ago, like a website with a whole bunch of practice tests. I know you have practice tests too, but if I'm going to do this, I'm kind of a crammer.
Yep. Focus on Force is probably the key one. That it's going to be like, what is it, $20 or $30, Kevin?
Not even. For one, it's $19, no tax.
Yeah,
that's really modest as opposed to other things.
And they really are. I have mine out there, yes, but it's not anything like what they're going to do for you. So it's well worth that investment. You can, honestly, a lot of people will take the actual Salesforce one and with the expectation, hey, I'm not going to pass it this time because I'm not really quite ready, but it'll give me a good way of knowing where my strengths are, so that when I take it the second time, I am ready to go. That's a little bit more of an expensive option because you do have a reprice, you will have a retest fee. But people do that. And that's 100% up to however you feel comfortable. But Kevin, did you have other resources other than Focus on? That's the one that I'm most familiar with.
Yeah, that's the one that I'm using. I mean, so there's two pieces that you can purchase. You can purchase the actual learning material for $19, and then you can purchase the practice exams. And the practice exams, they give you like 6 actual full exams. Excuse me. And then you have section exams you can do as well.
Yeah, they have a whole team of people creating theirs. So it's done nicely. I am still amazed that they do it for the price that they do.
Right.
Because having put together questions just for my own, it's very time consuming to do, and to do it, to make sure that you've got the right answer and you're resourcing it. It's a pretty decent effort. But yeah, I absolutely do that if you're so inclined. Looks like Salesforce Ben Get Certified. Bethany, you put a link out in our chat for that.
Yeah, that was another one that someone sent me.
Okay. I will tell you that from every time I'm out and about, I have people come up and talk to me about these videos. So participating, obviously, like what you guys are doing is crazy good for yourself, but you're also helping a lot of other people too. Down at Texas, I had one guy come up and say, tell your group that I'm watching and we're studying along with them, and we wish them well. So, just FYI, somebody in Texas or at Texas Dreamin' is paying attention to what we're doing and studying with you guys. So they hope that you're doing well as well. So
nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, very cool. All right. So Q&A all next week. And then I will send you on your way to go get certified.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right. We'll see you
Sounds good.
next week, guys. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Take care, team. Bye-bye.